James, Arsenal win their final game of the season, 2-1 away to Southampton.
Yeah.
Finished second, ultimately disappointing. But your initial thoughts now that the season's over?
Great. On we go. You know, and I acknowledge what Marty was saying earlier about he just enjoys watching his team, and I always acknowledge that there's fans who enjoy football differently. So let me just talk purely for myself, not in terms of how I expect the club to act or behave or treat these final games. I personally, a bit of football fatigue. I think there's just been so much football from the Euros. This season's been intense with the extra games. We went further in the cup, but we fell out of it. All the injuries. It's just kind of been bad news after bad news this season. It's been a really difficult watch, and I'm happy it's over, if I'm really honest. I don't ever want to feel that way. I don't want to wish time away, and I don't want to feel that way about watching my football team, which is what I don't really want to. I want to get on with the bit. But if we're talking about what Arsenal need to do to win the major honours, it is just about getting this season done and going into a big summer.
Let me just, I have an idea, but I'd like you to express it to other people. You're saying you're happy the season's over. Why is that?
Because we fell so short of all expectations. What were they? To win a trophy? Didn't do that. We went out appallingly against Man United, and it was a really poor 2 legs against Newcastle, though it was a semi-final, I'll give you that. We never really competed with Liverpool. We were never top of the table. We never, from November, we went about 7 points behind. We never clawed that back. We either went further or, clawed it back for a week before then they, extended the lead. And it was just generally just hard. We had no divine right to win the title, but the expectation would be compete. The expectation was if City had an off year, that's absolutely what they had with the Rodri injury. And, even going into today, they weren't sure they were getting Champions League football. And we didn't capitalise. So it's disappointing. The football's been really difficult. I think the expectation and the targets are, they're very, what's the word? Tangible things, whether it be challenging for the title, whether it be winning a trophy. But then there's things like the football we play. There's just a general feeling around the club, and some of it's not our fault. Injuries, refereeing decisions. Another shocking one in the Villa United game today. And then the PGMOL played way too big a part. Lewis Skelly doing amazing things. I'm glad he's been given his credit recently, but some of the media around him, it's just generally this season I haven't really enjoyed it. I don't think the spectacle's been great going to the final day with the title decided and the relegation battle done. Albeit we had an exciting sort of race for the top 4, which kind of got lively in the last 20, 30 minutes of the day. But I've just not really enjoyed it. I'm just being really honest. And look,
I appreciate your honesty. I'm going to ask you a question now, and look forward to hear your answer on this. Out of 10, how would you judge Arsenal's season? 10 obviously being the top, 1 being the bottom.
Yeah, 3 or 4. We did a video on this coming out on the channel. I can't remember if I gave it 4. I think I did. If a 5 is fine, which is like, look, it's not great, but it was okay. I think it's below that. I think we can acknowledge that with the injuries. Arteta said something around how other teams with the injuries we've had would have collapsed. And I think there's some truth to that. But I also think there's a little bit, maybe internally there's acknowledgement, there's accountability, but that sentence alone, whatever truth it does hold, doesn't account for what we didn't do in the transfer market, how we've been managing our group of players, whether we've been rotating enough, whether even what we've got, have we done enough to kind of entertain. But what I would say is, and I said this on a fan cam last week, and people in the comments got really annoyed at me, I don't really know why. I said if second in 2 semi-finals is a bad season, that's a good thing. And this is a bad season, but on paper, we're second and we got to 2 semi-finals.
That was going to be my supplementary question, because you've given it, was it 3 or 4?
Yeah, 3 or 4. Yeah.
3 or 4, okay. It's 3.5.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
So you've given a 3.5. We've finished second in the Premier League. Yeah. A comfortable second in the end. We've got to the semi-finals of the Champions League, putting out Real Madrid in the process. Some people might say that is worthy of more than a 3.5.
But it's like, yeah, but there's context to it all. It wasn't, if it was second like last season, it'd be way higher. Even if it was Liverpool we missed out to, who are deservedly champions, because at least you pushed them, because at least you put major points on the board, because at least you entertained us. The football was great, because at least we went on a great run at some point. Newcastle didn't beat us on penalties at St James's Park or knock us out with a defeat at St James's in a tight game. They absolutely battered us. The exit in the FA Cup was appalling, And against PSG, however you want to dress it up, and I've actually been one of the few saying that I actually think we played all right in those 2 legs. I don't think we disgraced ourselves at all. It was 3-1 against a team that we beat 2-0 earlier in the season. And look how much they grew and evolved. Look what they did in January to get into a better position for that game. And look what we did. So when you include the summer, January, the injuries, the refereeing decisions, everything we've got wrong, the style of football, there's so little I've enjoyed. But I do give a degree of credit that us having a bad campaign is finishing second. Like that, I'm like, okay, you know what? I mean, that shows that the floor's been raised to a degree, but that doesn't make, there's very little comfort to me. It means that, you know what, amongst all this, there is still a good team there, that if we add right in the summer, we can actually do something this season. That's what I feel most positively about. That actually, I think if we do the work right this summer, I don't think we're asking Arsenal to do anything crazy. But if we do it, I think we can be a genuinely really competitive and good side.
And in terms of positive, you spoke about positives very briefly there. Positives in terms of the players, what you've seen this season. I mean, I can think of a few obvious ones, but obviously the floor is yours to talk about positives this season in terms of players.
I encourage everyone to go watch Forever Arsenal, the latest one, because we did a player and managers ratings out of 10. And as you go through the players, you realise a lot of them got really high marks from us. we scored them all quite highly. And that probably tells you that for everything I've said about this season, for all the kind of frustrations, there's a group of players there that I think we feel really good about, whether it be Saliba, White, Timber, Kivior, Calafiori, Gabriel, Lewis Skelly at the back, right? There's a lot of good defenders there. We're really happy with our goalkeeper. Declan Rice, we're putting in conversations with some of the world's best. Thomas Partey has played at a level that has people wanting him to have a new deal. Odegaard, poor season, but we know what he was only 12 months ago.
Scored a very good goal today, by the way.
Very good goal, and fair play to him. Bukayo Saka, I missed 3.5 months. His numbers are still terrific. It's like Trossard's had a decent season, all things considered. And, then when Aries come through, Lewis Skelly's come through, there's a group there we feel really good about. This isn't... People can take... Because I can list off sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 negatives, that doesn't necessarily extend to everything, in particular the team. The team I feel really good about. I really still like this group of players. I really think that there's something they can genuinely do here. But... they need help, and I think they've called for that. Declan Rice and others, I think, have called for that, and let's see if they deliver upstairs. Arteta's now called for that, so let's see.
Well, you talk about delivering, the elephant in the room. Well, actually, it's not even the elephant in the room. Everyone's talking about it. We're all talking about it ad nauseum, really. We need a striker. I mean, if you look at the stats this season, none of our strikers, in fact, none of our players have gone into double figures in the Premier League this season. So we know that it was being said that if Newcastle get Champions League football, it's very unlikely that Alexander Isak will leave them. Then we now know that Newcastle, via the results today, have achieved Champions League football. So it would appear, anyway, at this moment in time, now that I'm speaking to you, that the two front runners are Gyökeres and Sesko. Now, I'm seeing reports this morning that Gyökeres, some of his family anyway, have come out and said that he's happy to stay at Lisbon. So now Sesko appears to be the front runner. What's your take on the strikers? Or could it be somebody else out of the blue?
Yeah, I said it's on the watch along, and I'll repeat it. I think it's important. I don't watch much of Sesko. I've watched very little. I don't watch much of Gyökeres. But what we do know, through whether it be watching comps, the little I have watched in terms of full 90s, when you look at stats, when you look at what others who have done scouting reports on these players say, what ultimately everyone kind of comes to the conclusion on is these are two players that you've got one who is scoring goals now, who's played football in the Championship, who's used to English football, maybe not the Premier League, but used to English football, and is like, this is your win now guy. But the question is, does it translate? Does what he's doing in Lisbon, in Portugal, does it translate to the Premier League? And then the Sesko deal is, this guy might be better than Gyökeres, but probably in 2-3 years. And we don't have that time. So will they look at it as more of a club investment, or they look at it as no, it's about doing what's right for this upcoming season? How much is Arteta willing to tweak his tactics? He moved Mikel Merino up front and he scored some big goals. So I don't believe that Gyökeres won't score goals in this team, but I don't know. My take is I would go for Gyökeres because I think that's more of a statement. It's not just about making a statement. I think he's the one that can come in and score the goals and take the chances we've been missing recently. But something tells me that I think we look down on Sesko too much a little bit as a fan base because Gyökeres is there and we wanted Isak. I think Sesko in 2-3 years' time will be talking about him like, glowingly. I just don't know if that's what we need right now.
Okay, James, thank you very much.
Cheers,
and we
Laurie.
move.
Thanks for the season, man.
No problem.
Hi, we've teamed up with UK Auto Claims to see if you could be eligible to score thousands in compensation. If you've had any cars, vans or motorbikes on finance between 2007 and 2021, go to ukautoclaims.co.uk to start your free simple check. Loads of you will have overpaid and payouts could be worth thousands, so you've got to look into it. Hit up the link below and check now for free.